Hi folks, it's Ivan here. I was asked recently how to write an executive summary for a business plan, and it's something I hadn't thought about too much because I write these documents so often I hadn't kind of given it too much thought. But what I've done is put a little slide deck together to kind of explain what you need to emphasize, some mistakes to make, and give you some examples of what works in other executive summaries. So if we look at this one here from Accenture, there's a few things. One is that the table of contents is quite short. You can see the document itself is quite short, but the executive summary itself, what's nice, what I like about it is that they've broken it up into a combination of text. There's 4 paragraphs and some tables underneath that. And most executive summaries aren't presented like that, but in this case, it works quite well. So that's something to consider. You don't always have to use plain text. Your goal with writing the executive summary is to be logical so that they get it in one go, to be interesting, but more than that, to build trust and credibility. So cut out the salesy stuff, really try and stick to the facts and try to demonstrate that the main document is sufficiently interesting for them to read. And that really is its function, particularly from a marketing point of view, is that you're trying to sell whatever is in the main document, whether it's a business plan, a grant application, or something along those lines. So it sets up for the reader what's coming around the corner. Now, it has different audiences, but in this case, we're going to look at writing executive summaries for a business plan. And the key thing is that we're writing them for decision makers. Now, I've put in journalists too as well, just to kind of demonstrate that the spectrum of readers can sometimes include other people. But with a business plan, something to consider is that you're not only writing it for the person who's going to have the final kind of yay or nay on the business application, because they're probably shared with other people who some will be experts in their fields. They may not all be technical. So you need to, so the best way to do that, by the way, is to phrase things so that there's no ambiguity in anything, that it's very clear to understand. And here's a good example from it's a white paper from Accenture. There's only 6 paragraphs in it. You can see straightforward enough. It's very, very easy to read. There's no great depth in it. If you could read it, you'd probably see that the language they use is very straightforward. They don't try to confuse you or overwhelm you with terminology. It's very easy on the eye. One suggestion is to, especially when you're doing a business plan, is to write the business plan, let it sit, let it kind of try to kind of digest the main parts, and then afterwards write the executive summary. Don't try to do the executive summary first and then charge into the business plan. Really, if you think about it, you can't really write the executive summary until you've written the business plan, because you don't know how all the parts will hang together. So even though it comes at the front of the document, you actually write it at the end. Here's a nice one from Samsung. And what's nice about it is that even though it's a technical executive summary, it's very easy on the eye. They use white space very generously. The bullet points break things up. It's not very pretentious. Small paragraphs, and you can even though it's very technical, you can isolate the things you want to understand very quickly. A few writing tips. You're just 4 or 5 here, but the main thing I would say is that don't copy and paste the introduction. That's the kind of I think the biggest no-no that I see in business plans is people who are using either some kind of boilerplate or just copying and pasting slabs of text and changing stuff. You need to really kind of dedicate some time from this and kind of stand back. And the main thing you need to get across in your executive summary is to generate enthusiasm. You need to kind of, it's like a kind of, an elevator pitch of sorts, where you need to create sufficient enthusiasm so that they feel compelled to go ahead and read the rest of the document. Be interesting, no? So here's another one here. They call it a foreword, but it's really the executive summary it's a UK government white paper. But the reason I put it in here is that it just shows you that, the way they've structured it is that it demonstrates they have a very deep understanding of the area in particular. And then they break it out sequentially, where they flow from paragraph to paragraph to paragraph, building on each point. And it's a very compelling way to write, whereby you identify one point or one area in each paragraph, then link it to the next one and link it to the next one. And it's nice. It kind of helps the reader kind of come through the document. A few other kind of writing tips besides the usual ones. I would just suggest that you make sure you can stand over everything, in the sense that if you are writing a business plan and you rather than saying, for example, everybody knows such and such about the market, or it's now accepted that. Make sure you include references to market research that supports what you're saying and that you can stand over everything. Because if you are applying for funding, people will challenge you. They'll want to know, where did you get those figures from? And if you can't stand over things, you're going to lose all credibility. Subheadings are a nice way to improve the readability. Here's an executive summary from a Swiss banking document. And what's nice about it is that, as you can see yourself, it's laid out very cleanly, good use of white space. The bullet points help quite a lot. And, it's written in a nice, simple, straightforward approach. If you kind of scan down through it, you see that on the third paragraph, they say the first objective of the report is, then the second objective of the report. So they kind of put their cards on the table, and you know what to expect in a document, and they summarize them with their conclusions. Sometimes people put the executive summary before the table of contents. I think that's a mistake, because you want to put it after the table of contents so that when the person finishes reading it, then they just go straight into the introduction. In other words, it bridges from one to the other. And if you put it before the table of contents, you create that break in the flow that you just don't want to happen. So table of contents first and put it afterwards. There's a lot of things to remember about writing it, but one is that you're writing it for someone to make a decision, whether it's a financial decision, but at some point they're going to read and kind of go, especially with a business plan, is this credible enough? Is it compelling enough? Do I have enough information to recommend it to someone else? So keep that kind of thought in your mind when you're writing it. You're writing for someone in a decision-making role. And as regards the structure of it, there is a format, but what we're trying to do here is to make sure that when the person has finished reading it, they get it in a nutshell. They understand straight up what you're trying to seek funding for in one sentence. And if the reader can't understand what you're looking for in one sentence and what you're recommending, you've created a problem. So always strive for clarity, strive to make it easier to understand. As regards the last point there, if you think about it, the executive summary is a kind of a standalone document. Even though it's part of the overall document, it could almost be torn out, put on the table, and if you read it in isolation, you'd understand the gist of the main document, the main business plan. A few things to bear in mind about that. Write the executive summary so it can be read independently of the main document. That really is the main thing, that it's a standalone. It's almost kind of like an advertisement for what's coming next, and think of it in those terms. 1 or 2 pages is fine. The key thing is that after the person has read it, can they make a decision? In other words, the decision, say, to give you funding or not. That's what it comes down to. And if it's a much longer document, then the kind of the 5 or 10% rule works quite well. But in general, strive for 1 or 2 pages. It is a summary. That's what you're going after. And don't confuse with the introduction. Okay, a few quick writing tactics. Short sentences, link all the ideas, build interest, and just watch the tone, in the sense that even though you can use a kind of, business casual English, at the same time you need to be respectful that, you are looking for funding, you are looking for assistance of some sort. So, make sure that comes across to you as well, and that you aren't too buddy-buddy with the people. Short paragraphs, 1 idea per paragraph, and make it scannable in the sense that they may not read it, they probably will not read it the first time anyway, word for word. They'll scan through it. So write it to be scanned. In other words, use lots of headings, lots of bullet points, tables, and all of that helps the reader get into the document. As regards the font, I try to make the font at least size 12, use double spacing, a lot of white space, so it's easy for the reader. I don't want any impediments or barriers whatsoever for the reader reading the executive summary, because if the executive summary doesn't ring true, if it isn't interesting to them, they're not going to go forward and read the business plan with the same kind of enthusiasm that's needed. So those are a few things to bear in mind. As regards the writing process, write several drafts, make connections with the reader, revise in waves, don't try and do it all in one go, and keep going to the finishing line. That's pretty much what we're after. So I hope you found that interesting. If business planning or business writing is of interest to you, there's other tutorials on this channel, and a tweet or a like would be fantastic. So see you soon, okay? And send me any questions, by the way, if you have about this area, ivan@clarity.com. Speak to you soon. Bye.